to Buzz in Goa 24/7, a brand new show that discusses the issues that concerns you, the people of Goa. A show that brings out your questions to this platform and discusses it with the people who will try to answer and find solutions to your questions. So today we've invited Anish Kenny to the studio. Anish belongs to the illustrious family of Mandovi Group, who chose a different path and has created a platform in sports for children and youth in Goa. He is the founder of Goa Rugby and team owner of Crocodiles. So before we go ahead and discuss more on the issue, I would like to ask you, Anish, to share us your journey and how did you start with sports while your family is into hospitality business. I'm sure when any family is into that business, they try to get their next generation as well to take over. I'm sure you must have had that pressure. So just give us enlighten us on, how was your background? How did you ended up or started your journey in sports?
Right. So I'm a born-bred Goan. I've always been in Goa all my life. This is where I did my studies. And then I went to Bombay to do my graduation, and then I went abroad to England and the US to do my post-graduation. And that's how I saw rugby when I was there. And I played it as a hobby when I was doing my master's in entrepreneurship and management finance. When I came back to Goa, I came back for the same reason, to be a part of the family business and learn about hospitality. And my brother and me were successful in our days to set up a great hospitality chain on our own. And my inclination was always sport, although it was a hobby at that time. I did try to find a way how I could, make my hobby my career. And then when my brother and me sold our businesses post a great valuation, we decided to go our own way. And I said, I'm going to take time out and I'm going to try to find a way that how I can make, rugby a part of Goa.
So why rugby?
I loved it. One of the reasons why I loved rugby is because of the values that the game brings to the field, and also because it involves a lot of mental toughness as well as physical toughness. So, it develops a player overall. I'm a diehard football fan. I've always watched cricket. I've been a part of hockey. You name the sport. I've always loved sport in general. So I was wondering, what can I do where, I can set things up from scratch on my own and, probably set the guidelines from the very beginning. And I realized that, rugby didn't exist. It's something which I liked when I was abroad. So I said, why don't I just set this up?
So wouldn't there have been, something, rugby was not even that famous, considering India, and forget, let's talk about Goa, where football is the first game. Yeah. And then the next thing you have cricket. Yeah. So was it like a difficult decision to start, or is it was just an instant that you wanted to do rugby?
It was a decision where I knew I wouldn't have a lot of interference. It was also a decision where I knew, being an expert in entrepreneurship and someone who enjoys setting up businesses, for me, it's always a challenge to do something where it hasn't been touched. Because, it's invented, you're now working on the innovation to bring it delivered in another way to the rest of Goa. So, yes, it was a challenge. It still is a challenge. But what we've done is we've put it across to people in a better way, saying, if you play football and you try out rugby, you get tougher and you become a better footballer. You become a better cricketer, you become a better player in any other sport. So people use rugby more to get tougher. And it has proved in the past, it's proving now as we talk, that, players who learn this version of extreme physicality as well as mental toughness get better in all the sport that they play.
Okay. So, how did it start? Like, how did you reach out to people?
Yeah, so the best way to explain this is walking around on the beach without having a ball in the hand, finding a coconut, draining it out and using that as the ball. Okay. So that was pretty much the way rugby started in Goa. And we had a few people who came around, passed it around, said, hey, are you guys interested in, learning more? And we're like, yeah, this sounds good. Why not try it out? So we were like 10 of us on the beach that day, pulling in people from everywhere to say, just stand for a picture so we can show the rest of Goa that there are players playing this version. And then it just started going viral. We had people coming in, and that's when we said that, hey, you know what, we still continue to think of this as a hobby. We won't really look at this as a career, but just let's start going in every direction and seeing if people will pick to the game. And they did.
So here one line I remember, and that is said that fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
So is that something I can say for you?
Absolutely, absolutely. We did fake it till we make it.
Good.
But at the same time, when we were trying to tell people that, there is a possibility of you making a career in this sport, we knew what we were saying, because we were extremely sure that, if they can hook on, knowing that our educational background, also knowing the fact that, the country has access to so many wonderful athletes, not just from, the elite societies of life, but also from many societies which haven't been developed. We were pretty confident that we could find a bunch of athletes that could then showcase that talent to the world. So yes, we did show people a dream, although we didn't know what the eventual goal was, but we did know that if they did hook onto it, it would give us a reason to work towards building a platform.
Okay, wonderful. So I think that's inspiring for many of our people who are trying new things, and at times we go through depression and things don't work out. So I guess the fact that you still continue, you be persistent with what you're doing, and I think they will get what they're looking for.
In fact, depression is a topic which is very keenly addressed even on the field, because we look at a lot of players who come to us on the field saying, hey, things haven't worked out in another sport, things haven't worked out at home. So the coach, the person who's actually with them, plays a really important role. And I have a lot to thank for my mom being a psychologist and also the president of Goa Psychology Association, has constantly empowered me with thought.
We'll talk about that a bit later, because I think that's another topic we need to discuss.
So as you said about the depression aspect, that when they come to the field, you can use sport as an amazing tool to just show them direction.
I think that's really good knowledge for our audience. So Anish, while we were discussing about how you started your journey in rugby, we want to understand, we just discussed about, faking it till making it. What were the problems did you come across, and how did you tackle the situations?
I wouldn't really call them a problem. I would call them as a barrier which we expected, and we had worked out routes around it to go. So as you said, the issue was we were entering a non-conventional sport, a state which doesn't really know about rugby, which doesn't have any introduction to the sport. Secondly, everyone talks about finance, but I know you did mention the fact that I do come from an affluent family, but my whole point was, if you're setting up a business where you're pumping in money from the start, that really isn't a good business model. So our whole point was to try and make sure that we set up rugby in a way that, we lead to a stage where we don't really need to ask people for help. And that was the reason why we did reach where we have reached today, is because our whole plan was we keep going, we keep growing, and we do whatever we can within our limits to make sure that we do establish rugby. You don't have a ball, you use a coconut. Someday when someone sees it, they're like, hey, these guys have potential, let's send them a couple of balls from this part of the world. And that's exactly what happened. Okay. So the barriers, honestly, were none. We had absolutely no barriers in Goa, because our mindset, our mentality was, we want to achieve this. We want to make sure that this dream is reaching out to the rest of Goa, and people are going to, catch on to this dream and come out. And that's exactly what happened. So yes, we had, when people said, oh, you don't have a ground for rugby, we have a beach.
Yeah.
So why complain? You can play on the beach. Or you don't have enough kids to play rugby. I don't think that's a complaint when we have 1.5 billion people in this country. True. And as we finish this interview, there's probably another 100 born. So, that's never an issue that you don't have someone for the sport. Secondly, you talk about mentality of the parents. What is it that, they want from the child? They want them to study well. They want them to grow up to become better human beings. So if you can offer that sort of value education through sport, you've got the parents on your side as well. What do the schools want? The schools are always about, oh, we've got so many sports already, and we've got this and we've got that. Make it easier for them. Don't throw the load onto their PE teachers. Don't throw the load onto the management or the government saying, hey, I've come to you with a proposal, give me the cash. Why would someone just give you the cash? You need to have a great project for them to say, you guys are doing well. We love what you've done without our help, and now we are to back you. And that's exactly where Goa Rugby is today. Passed all the barriers, looked at it as a learning curve, and we've achieved what we've had to. I wouldn't say we are probably the greatest success story of Goa. I can say we're somewhere up there.
So here I want to ask you a question. Like, you started with the youth.
Yeah.
That means you took young people into your training regime. And then how did the children happen?
So we are now in our 4th year. So our first year was more about mass development. It was about going from village to village, going from church community to church community, visiting a school and doing like an introductory camp. And we had these group of volunteers, more friends, who said, hey, I'd like to come around and try helping a child. I would like to come around and see if I can teach and I can coach. And I was like, hey, you're more than welcome. Just join in as a volunteer. And we kept spending year 1 doing that. And by the end of year 1, we realized that we've got a grand tournament with about 60, 70 teams who are playing the sport just by doing a few camps here and there. Then we said, in year 2, let's try targeting the schools. Maybe we can go to a school and say, this is what we did in year 1. in year 2, maybe if we get a bit of your backing, we can do these camps in your school. And they were like, sure, go for it. And, that's what we did. We had camps in schools and we had a school league going on.
Okay.
In year 3, we said, okay, now that we've got mass that knows about it, we've got schools that know about it, we need a team to manage this. So we said, let's divide Goa into 4 zones. So we divided Goa into north, south, east and west. And we floated tenders for people to come out and own clubs.
Okay.
Now, mostly when you talk about ownership of clubs, you say, oh, there's someone who'll invest in it and someone who's got the money. But our criteria to own a club was you're going to make time and you're going to show us enthusiasm. So when we had people coming up there saying, hey, you know what, we want to make time, we have enthusiasm, we realized their average age is about 17 to 19 and they want to own a club in Goa. So how good is that when you even want to talk about entrepreneurial development for young children of Goa or, showing them hope. And that's how they ran that tournament. And season 3 was all about club development. So each club in each part of Goa took up the schools in their area, the villages in their area, and started fielding teams from under 11s, under 14s, under 17s, and seniors. And now we are into season 4.
So another question here. When you started, it was more like your own initiative, and then you had to get, association. You had to get a partnership or a kind of certification from an association to be part of. Tell us more about that journey.
So in the first 3 years, we started off playing a version of rugby called touch rugby. Now, rugby, as you know, when someone talks about it, is that physical form of rugby where everyone goes in and breaks a bone. So that's the reason we said, to change that sort of mindset, let's bring in a version which isn't involved with a lot of contact. So we brought in touch rugby. And we were associated with the Touch Rugby Federation of India. But the whole aim was someday to get into the actual version of rugby, which is that physical version of, contact rugby. Because when you do associate yourself with that national body, you get many openings, like the national games comes into the picture. You get Olympic qualification. You can play for clubs all over the world. So eventually in year 4, when, we reopened dialogue with Rugby India, which is the National Federation of Rugby, we were very happy to be welcomed by them. And we moved over in year 4 into contact rugby. So our development plan now is more, even if we're doing with kids, the under 11s and the under 14s, the whole plan is to someday get them ready to handle physical contact and become tougher players.
So give us more about your journey and how did your team perform from initial to now? What is the status?
In the first 2 years of us running rugby in Goa, we got offers to play the nationals, and we at the federation took a decision that we're not going to do it. And everyone was appalled, saying, hey, you guys are doing rugby, why aren't you sending a team to the nationals? So we're like, we aren't ready. We aren't ready. We have a plan in place. We'll probably be ready by the third year. And we were. And in year 3, we went to play the nationals and we won gold. So that was amazing, that the fact that, the journey started from mud and, ended up with gold. It was a great transition for Goa. We knew now we had arrived. That was the right time for us to, say, hey, you know what, we've done well at the version of touch. Let's move over to contact. And that's when, Rugby India came calling, and we were very happy to be a part of this decision. And immediately we transitioned over this year in June 2017. And by the end of June, within a week and a half, we had already trained a team that was ready to take on full contact in Chennai, where they went for the under 18 nationals. And the boys started off the tournament in rank 24, and the girls started off the tournament in rank 21.
Wow.
And the girls finished in the top 10, and the boys finished 6th. So for us, it was incredible, the fact that they've been training for a week and a half. Now, we all know to play a version of contact rugby, you need to be extremely strong. You need to be extremely physical. Even in the gym, you need to have a great routine, whether it's your sleep or your stress or the food that you eat. It's really important. But what really helped was over the last 3 years, we got the athletes physically tough on the field with their mind. We had so many instances where they would just, fall down saying, hey, my hand's paining or my knee's paining, or I've got a fever, or I've got a headache. Now, most of us coaches are now trained professionals when it comes to paramedics and handling emergency response.
Okay.
So when we would see that, we would say, hey, you know what, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your team's time. The game's still on. You either get up and get on with it, or if you need help, we will attend to you. And they would lie down there for a few seconds and then be like, hey, my team's losing out because it's probably 6 on 5 players. I need to get back into the game. So when we did transition into contact rugby, it was very easy for us.
Okay.
And post that, we got another month and a half to come back to go and prepare for the senior nationals. Now, the senior nationals is a very tough competition because you have rugby, which is existing in India from the 1800s. It was bought in by the British. The first Calcutta Cup was held. And teams like Maharashtra, Calcutta, the Haryanas, the Army, the Indian Army have literally fabulous teams playing rugby in India. And when we went there, our boys and girls were like, wow, we finally arrived on a national stage, and this is what we really want to experience. And most of the teams that were playing this nationals were an older age. They were probably around my age who were yet playing rugby. And the Goa squad that we had taken there was average age around 18. So, we were like, hey, you know what? Let's look at this as an advantage. We've started young. We probably have a few years to catch up, but let's put in 100%.
Yeah.
And when we did play this tournament, the men's is really difficult. We started off at rank 21 and we came back with rank 10. So for them to jump up 11 ranks with very fierce competition was absolutely brilliant. We were really happy as coaches. The ladies, on the other hand, started at rank 18 and they had to come in the top 7 to qualify for League 1, which is Division 1, which is very, very tough to get into. And they finished 7th.
Wow.
So our ladies moved up into Division 1, and they've now paved the path for even our men to catch up. So that shows, development of both in Goa, like you have the males and now you have the females playing a form of rugby. So that's become a great source of inspiration. And as we talk here in the studio, I just came back from the station where I've dropped one of our players who's heading to Bombay for the Team India camp. And he's possibly representing India, being a Goan on the world stage where he'll be part of the Youth Olympics in China next weekend.
Wonderful. Congratulations for that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Another thing here, you said the coaches.
Yeah.
Now, initially, I believe you were the one who started coaching. And tell us, did you bring a coaching system in place? And about the diets, did you actually consult your children and the youth for their diets? And tell us the program that you followed.
So with regards coaching, what we did do is, since we stay in a very expat exposed state of Goa, we have a lot of people who are based here who are rugby friendly. And when we did put up statuses on social media saying, hey, is there anyone living in Goa who knows about rugby or who's interested in being a part of Goa Rugby? We had this really nice couple called Miss B and Dave Trotter who got in touch with us. And to our luck, both of them were ex-international Welsh players who played on the Wales team.
Okay.
And they were like, hey, we're based in Goa now, we're retired here, do you need our help? And we're like, come on in. And then we had someone else get in touch with us, and then someone else get in touch with us. So our coaching panel again comprised of volunteers, saved money again, had more enthusiasm. People like me, people like them weren't doing this for the money. We were doing this because we really wanted to grow rugby in Goa. And that just grew the project. And
so basically, I believe it's your enthusiasm, your own persistence that you actually got there and you created a system.
It was viral. It was viral because when I did step out onto the field, honestly, because I had this gentleman named Peter Fernandez who came back in from New Zealand. That's where he was studying his course in sports. And when he came back here, he's like, hey, I heard that you're interested in rugby. I'm a Goan. I was in New Zealand. Why don't we get together and, found this project? And Peter and me were the ones who first stepped out onto the field. And he told me this one line. He's like, when you grow, the energy becomes so strong that people just get attracted to you. They just say that, hey, this is a vision which I want to be a part of. This is something, there's something about this that I want to just be a part of. It might just be, can I just take the photographs of the session? Or can I just stand next to you guys and feel motivated? Or is there anything else I can do? And that's how everyone started coming together. And that's how Goa Rugby grew.
Wow, that's an amazing journey, and I still would have a lot of questions from the locals, Goa, because it doesn't happen so much that you, and with so many people that they just start something and eventually things turn up. There are a few journeys wherein they don't succeed and they give up. Yeah. What do you have for them? I would want you to answer to the audience that in case things don't work out, what is it that I'm sure, because even though you come from an illustrious family, you have not taken their support and you've done this all alone. I don't want people to believe that this is something that was, silver plated for you. I'm sure you must have been through your own journey. I want you to talk to our audience and tell them what to do when they are in such an atmosphere where they feel that they might not be able to take this further, be it sports, be it education. How do you want them to stay motivated?
Right. So the first thing is you got to remember that there's this very important quote. It's one day or day one. You got to choose. If it's one day, it's always going to remain one day. It's either going to happen or it might not happen. But if it's day one, that's when you step out and you take the first step and you're on the field. For me, as a person being born and bred in a family where I didn't really have to ask for anything, I had to drop my ego. That was the first thing I had to do. I had to say, hey, you know what? I've been a part of a family where I was born with a spoon which was silver or gold in my mouth, but you know what, there's probably someone else who wants this. There's probably someone else who deserves a great life. And I stepped out onto the field and I'm like, hey, you know, there's so many things I can learn from different ages. And the learning curve is brilliant. There's athletes who've been 5 years old, 6 years old, who've come on the field, and they've taught me so much. There's people who've been 70 and 80 years as part of Goa Rugby who still teach me so much. So believe in your people, believe in your team, because your team is what makes you. Believe in the forces that you have around you. There's never an excuse. If you want to find a way, trust me, you can find a way. And people around you who are close to you, who are willing to love you for your dream and be a part of your vision, will show you the way. Trust them, be a part of people's lives. It's unimaginable how they can come back to be a part of your life, and just keep believing. You have a dream, go for it and don't stop. I can guarantee you're going to get there.
And we were just discussing about how to stay and keep ourselves motivated when we go through our down phases. So here I wanted to discuss one more thing with him, which is about teachings. He was talking about teachings, and we want to understand what does he do for himself to be able to be in a position to decide for the team when to go for the play or when to go for the tournament and when to not. What was it that made him believe when they were ready and when they were not? I'm sure that takes a lot of teachings and understandings from professionals, and I want to understand how me and the people of Goa would want to understand that if they want to succeed in something, what else they can do to prepare themselves. So, go ahead.
So here again, going back to a quote, something which was taught to me by my mentor, and I'm not going to hesitate to tell you who he is. He's Coach Mark Seagraves, who's part of the Football Factory. He's someone who's really formed my career, you know, in coaching. I did want to teach. I did want to be a coach. In fact, my family history shows that my grandfather, my mom's mom, was a principal, and so was my mom, and so was my rest of my family. And the other side of my family is into hospitality. So if you infuse hospitality and teachings, you can deliver a fabulous project which is really comfortable for audiences. So when I did meet Mark at the Football Factory and I learned styles of coaching, they were little basics, like, you know, just making sure that the coach stands facing the sun, which makes it easier for the children to look into the shade. You know, little things like that. And as a coach, what I really have done for the children of Goa and the people of Goa is I've connected with them at their level. Because they say a coach is only as good as his weakest player. I might be standing on the field and saying, hey, you know, I've got a bunch of 10 athletes. 9 of them are brilliant. Let's ignore number 10. But that number 10 is going to play in the team. So if I don't really train that number 10, his 9 other players that are in the team or her 9 other players that are in the team are never going to develop. So yes, a coach has to be holistic. A coach has to go down to the level of the player, understand what they want, what is the delivery like, because tomorrow when you're teaching an under 11, it's a completely different strategy. You're teaching a senior team, it's a completely different strategy. And me being a part of hospitality in a family that is, you know, raised me in understanding the ethics of public relations, of, you know, customer-driven engagement, customer-driven, you know, just give them what they want, you know, the customer always being right. Has also allowed me to use this perspective in coaching as a sport. Because for me, I look at all my players as probably, you know, customers who've come to me to learn a service that I'm trying to deliver. So what are they trying to expect from me? Are they trying to come here to say, hey, you know, that's my coach, I want to be like him, which means I then become a role model. If I become a role model, what is it that I need to do? I need to alter my lifestyle. I need to ensure that, you know, if they want to be like me, I need to be someone who's mentoring them, not just on the field, but off the field as well. So as a coach, it's everything. From the moment you wake up till the moment you go to sleep, trust me, that child's watching you.
Wonderful. So here, for children, tell us any story about, I'm sure you must have seen your children grow. Yeah. So tell us 1 or 2 stories about your children, how they were when they initially came, and what was the development you saw. It's been 4 years, and there must have been some students who must have outperformed, and some might want to leave in 3 to 4 months training. So give us a few stories about that.
Right. So starting with those who have performed, there's a really nice story which I'll always remember of this little boy named Ankit. Now, Ankit joined us in the under 14s. He was 10 years old when he joined in, and he used to live on campus he was a boarder in a school, and he used to live on campus, and he would come daily for training. I remember we did a camp in Christmas once where he had to go to his house, which was about an hour and a half away. And this boy saved for 3 months so that he could pay for the taxi fare.
Wow.
At 10 years old. So he saved for 3 months for the taxi fare, left his house at 5 in the morning so he could reach at 7 to the ground, for which he had to wake up at 4 in the morning, reach the ground, finished his training, made sure the taxi waited, so he paid for that fare as well, and went back home. And I got to know this post the camp. He didn't show it at all in the field that, hey, I've done something great, or I've done something which you need to be proud about. I did this because I love you. I did this because I want to learn from you, and because I enjoy being a part of this setup. Right. So that was something fabulous. We have so many success stories. We've got players who've come in from various backgrounds. We have the affluent players who come in with their ego-packed schedules. So they've turned into fabulous human beings. Then we have the ones who come from underprivileged backgrounds who've now become great human beings as well. They were fabulous people always, but for them to be a part of an exposed lifestyle where you'll have, someone who's traveling abroad twice a year for holidays with families, and then you have someone who sees a book where it says, oh my God, that's a foreigner. So when you have these two people on the same team, what is it that you really have to do to make sure these athletes cope up? So for me, I've seen overall development that has reached the stage. For players who leave us, for players who go their own way, they again are special to us as well, because what we do is we maintain relationships. We are building love. We're building relationships at Goa Rugby and at sport. So, they're with us today. Tomorrow, if they move into another sport, we're really happy for them, because when they do well, they do turn around and they say, hey, Coach Anish, thank you for that little advice that you gave me, because I'm here because of you probably. And even if they don't say it, we know in their heart they do mean it. When they go abroad, we've got so many players from Goa, considering, we have access to different parts of Europe because of our Portuguese influence. We got so many players from here who leave from our villages and go abroad and stay in different parts of the world. They keep in touch. They join rugby clubs over there. Those rugby clubs write to us. And at the end of it, we realize that these players are helping us build relationships with the rest of the world just because we spend a few hours on the field saying, we really believe in you.
That's an awesome story for our children and the parents who think that you cannot make a career. As long as you have the enthusiasm and the will to do something, I'm sure you can succeed. Now, moving ahead, we would like to know, the government has always been telling us about the policies and the way they want to promote sports in Goa. And they have also honored you with the Chief Minister's honor for your contribution in sports in Goa. So, was it like after that or before that, were you able to get any support from the government, or how did the recognition help you?
It helped me feel happy for them. It helped me feel happy for the fact that they can recognize athletes, they can recognize efforts. I honestly have no complaints and no say when it comes to anything related to the government. I'm just happy that we are allowed to exist and do what we like without any interference. Whenever we've been to the government with any ideas to talk about or share, they've always been open. They've always kept their doors open for Goa Rugby, and always heard us out, always heard and given us a path beyond that. But as I said, everything that we do at Goa Rugby is on our own. Everything that we achieve is a plan where we don't really want to go to people for help unless it's a blessing. I would say when I did get the award, I considered that as a blessing from the government saying, hey, great job, well done for the people of Goa. We watched you and we're glad that you've achieved what you did. So I was very grateful to the fact that I did receive that. But how you do maintain a great relationship with most people is there is no give and take. I give, you give, they're doing for the people of Goa, I'm doing for the people of Goa. What's the difference between me and the government? I'm as good as the government because I'm still doing service. So I've always had a great equation with them, and nothing but thank you for always allowing us to exist.
Wonderful. That's a great thought. Other than the government, 4 years journey, and you've been here long enough. Did you receive support from the other sides? It could be the facilities or in terms of monetary. Did you receive any support?
Yes. So what we did do was Goa Rugby now has broken up into a 5 model phase of development. 4 being the clubs which manage North, South, East and West. Which the North is managed by a club called Crazy Pirates. The South is managed by a club called Crocodiles. The East is managed by a club called Saints. And the West is managed by a club called Trimates. Again, as I spoke about these young entrepreneurs who are handling these models. Then the 5th phase of development is the Black Clause, which is Team Goa. We've re-christianed Team Goa as the Black Clause. So each model now has their own source of funding. And trust me when I say this, when these kids go out to potential sponsors in their areas, they've always had backing. They've always had people who've been like, you guys have the reach, you guys have the dream, you have the vision, you'll have value education going through your sport, y'all are achieving, we're there with you. And when we go to them, it isn't about always, hey, put the cash on the table. We don't really want to show them that it's a one-way benefit. Yeah. It's more a return. You're doing something and we want you to be a part of us so that you benefit in the long run. Right. And we've had people from all over Goa, all over India. And the greatest part about this is we've had Goans abroad, and we had people who are enthusiastic rugby supporters from all over the world saying, Goa, love that state, my homeland, people in India playing rugby, send the money. And the money reaches. We don't know from where, but the money comes into Goa Rugby and it's always there. Great. So as I said, it's that aspect of love that we develop. When we talk about Black Claws, it's more a structured model of sponsorship because we are now looking at overall development of Goa. And we've had some great backing. A notable sponsor recently being Audi Goa, who came in to support the project. So when we have big names like this that are a part of Goa Rugby, it just paves the way for more brands to come in. But none of this happened in year 1, none of this happened in year 2, none of this happened in year 3. It's all come now in year 4. So as I spoke about earlier, that when you think about giving up, that last thing saying, nothing's worked out, you're really close to opening that door. And when that door does open, it opens in a big way and everything just comes in. That's wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing that. And I'm sure many of our audience are going to get motivated today. And leave us your feedback, what you feel about Anish Kenny and his efforts, and about Goa Rugby. If you want to get associated, you can contact... you can just get in touch with us. We're always there for you. Your Facebook or anything you want to do. Yes, we are on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, by the name. Twitter at Goa Rugby. So if you want to get in touch with Anish Kenny, his Facebook page is there as Goa Rugby. You can contact him, leave him feedback. You can also leave us feedback and we'll give him the information. Till now, we have discussed with Anish about his contribution to sports, but there are various other factors that come in play, and you would be surprised to know that Anish is also involved with his mother for her clinical setups and works as the research sports psychologist. Now, tell us more about how you got involved and how did this research started happening. Right. So I've always wanted to understand how sports is understood by athletes, how sports is understood by prospective audiences or by people who are responsible for developing or breaking an athlete's career. And I've always realized that this is more a mind game. Anything related to sport starts with the mind, ends with the mind, continues with the mind. And that's with any aspect in life, to be very honest. So when my mom handles most of her clinics and when she used to study her research theories on psychology, I wanted to learn more about the subject. And that's how I started reading about, the things she does, some of the cases she handles, which have also been athletes. And that's when I wrote 8 papers on psychology, which, and each paper relates to one aspect on the field that I saw as a coach, whether it was anger management, whether it was leadership, whether it was motivation, whether it was teamwork, everything has a theory behind it. And when you actually go into the details of that theory, you understand that there are little things which you understand as an athlete or as a coach. If you can just grab onto or develop that, you're through. And that really helped me, mold careers, develop individuals, which has now gone viral because when I learned from mom, I absorbed the information, and the next job after you get an information is to give it back. And you teach. So I taught that to people of Goa who are now teaching more people of Goa. So when did this happen? Because all my life, being part of hospitality, my dad would always infuse hospitality values into me. My mom, being part of psychology, would always influence psychology values into me. And then a mix of hospitality, psychology, teachings, and everything else in life, just molds you into a wonderful human being with a lot of values. We discussed about career as well. Yeah. So now we are not going to talk just about rugby because our audience is not just interested in rugby. They also want to know one of the major concerns that Goans have is the future of sports in Goa, which is somehow they feel that it's not very promising. Would you like to enlighten people about how it can change, how it can bring something which had been there and it can be revisited going forward? Being a psychologist in sports, I'm sure you can talk more about it. So. It's not just Goa that has this question. Honestly, it's a question which is asked by almost everybody in the whole world. Rather in India, where do I go with sport? I'm sitting in front of you today as an entrepreneur who studied all over the world, and I'm here running sport extremely successfully with 4 clubs, the finance now coming in, and me managing my day-to-day expenses on my own, including everyone who's related to Goa Rugby. I'm going to explain to you the setup of our clubs. let's take, for example, my South Goa club, Crocodiles, and that's pretty much the same with Trimates, Saints, and Crazy Pirates. We have 10 managers that run our club. The average age of each manager is between 17 and 19. All of them yet studying, but all of them interning with our club. Now, what are they getting when they come to be a part of Crocodiles? I have a media manager who handles my media. I have someone who does my facilities management. I have somebody who does my event management. I have somebody who does business development. I have someone who does the job of a CEO. I have someone who handles specialized services like doctors. Then I have someone who handles community relationships. I have someone who handles family relationships. Now, all of this is an internship which these people are getting at a very early age. Tomorrow, when they finish their education, they can pick just this topic and move on. We can see that leagues all over India are developing. Like you have your televised leagues, like your football leagues and your cricket leagues and your kabaddi leagues and your hockey leagues. They do look out for professionals in these fields. So today, if I have someone who's handling, just say, social media for Goa Rugby and doing an internship with us for 3 years or 5 years, they can then use that as a certificate to break into a profession, not just in sport. Tomorrow, social media is required anywhere else.
Yeah.
You look at the field of sport today, you're looking at an engineer, there's stadiums. Stadiums require specialist stadium engineers. You look at doctors, you require sports doctors, you require sports nutritionists, you require sports psychologists, you require sports coaches, athletes. There's just so much off the field. It's not just that person who's playing. Who develops that athlete is a team that's working behind the scenes to make sure that he does well. Yes, the athlete, you do realize that you have a great player named Cristiano Ronaldo, brilliant player, fabulous idol for almost every child in the world. Is he just Cristiano Ronaldo because of him? There's a big back office team that's working to make him who he is. Whether it's his gym trainers, whether it's anyone related to any of the athletes. So a career in sport, it's open. You just have to go online or give me a call and ask me what's available, and I'll be very happy to tell you where all you can actually make a career in this field, or intern with a club. And today, when you have a great setup in Goa, like our very own FC Goa, fabulous management setup. They've got every department working so well. You can join these guys. You can join clubs in Goa like Goa Rugby, which have 5 franchise clubs working for them, and everyone else. And you can just make a career in sports. So yes, you make sure you study. It's really important you do well in education, because all of us today who are running Goa Rugby, I'm going to highlight this one aspect, that the team that won gold in the India Nationals, that was the team Goa, had an average percentage of 79% in their academics. So when you look at those athletes and they're intelligent enough, they make great decisions on the field.
Okay.
So it's really important that you study well, because that's your backup. Your education is your backup. Tomorrow you're playing sport as an athlete and you get injured and you can't play again, where do you go? So you need to make sure your education is sound, you're strong, and then you keep moving on and you open your career options, not just in sport, but you can use these experiences to join any field tomorrow. Today, if anything happens to me and I lose Goa Rugby, I've got 4 years of experience. I can walk into any other club today and say, this is my resume, this is what I've done. I'm available to be a part of you, and I'm sure I'll get a job.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing all this information with us and the audience. And we'll sure get many more questions from our audience. And as and when the need arises, we are going to call you back and ask you the questions again.
No problem. Anytime.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for being with us. What we will discuss next week, we don't know. We want you to leave us your questions and we will select one to present on our platform. So go ahead, follow us on In Goa 24/7 on Twitter and Facebook, and leave us your feedback, suggestions and concerns. We'll get back to you next week with another question.